Mr. Chairman, several of the cases of employee misconduct that has been reported from the IG took place in Region 4, where you, Mr. Myberg, were the administrator. One of the cases in particular that's on my mind took place in your watch, referring to a GS-12 employee making over $100,000 a year who was found to be stealing thousands of dollars of property from the EPA. In fact, that the individual pled guilty to felony theft and was placed on 3 years probation, but astonishingly only received 30 days suspension by the EPA. Mr. Myberg, my obvious question is, how in the world can an employee be found guilty and admit to felony criminal charges of stealing from the EPA and not be fired?
Congressman, I'll speak to that case since, as you note, I was the deciding official. This was, and I want to be clear that there's not a question about whether what the employee did was wrong. What the employee did was wrong, and she needed to be held accountable for doing something wrong. When a case comes forward we get—
It was criminal.
The criminal conviction, the settlement in the court case, occurred after we took disciplinary action. There are two paths, as you probably know, whereby you go on this. One is the path of administrative discipline, and the other is a potential referral to either the U.S. attorney or to local authorities, which occurred in this case. At the time we took administrative discipline, the question before us was what was appropriate administrative discipline given the information we had from the investigation report, which we did.
So, you know, it's astonishing to me that a 30-day suspension is all that someone gets for even pleading guilty of felony theft. We've got the taxpayers on the hook for this type of behavior. And so you were the administrator, were you involved in determining the disciplinary action?
Yes, I was the deciding official in that case.
So in deciding on that case, you're saying that you were not aware of the criminal charges when you made the final decision?
I was generally aware that there was a possibility of proceeding, but I did not know what the outcome of that was.
But you were aware of thousands of dollars that had been stolen?
I was aware that approximately $3,000 in camera equipment had been pawned and then lost to the agency through that transaction.
And in your determining decision, that was only worth a 30-day suspension?
And there were many factors. In any individual case, there are many factors that the deciding official uses. They're generally referred to as the Douglas factor, but there are many factors that the deciding official uses in deciding what an appropriate penalty would be. And I'm obligated by law to consider all of those in reaching a decision on a penalty.
It's just amazing to me that the agency doesn't do more to punish people who are stealing from the agency, who even plead guilty to criminal theft, and they still have the right and privileges on the shoulders of taxpayers to continue working for the agency. I just can't wrap my mind around this. This committee has heard time and again of the EPA literally plagued with constant employee misconduct. And yet at the same time, the EPA routinely goes after businesses across this country for much less serious offenses and throws fine after fine after fine to businesses that often are doing virtually nothing in comparison. I mean, we hear stories of businesses all the time for slight infractions getting serious fines, and yet here we have the EPA in a double standard having employees involved in criminal behavior, and they just get 30-day suspensions or less. It's an absolute hypocritical double standard. And it's disgusting not only to me to hear these kind of things, but the American people are fed up with this kind of stuff. They get slapped time and time again with fines because a ladder is in the wrong place or whatever the slight infraction may be. And yet, you guys are putting up with this. The state of the affairs at the EPA, to me, is totally unacceptable, Mr. Chairman. And I just believe that the EPA wants the trust of the American people, and this committee have got a long ways to go to get their house in order. And I yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman from Georgia. The gentleman